You know, more and more, I notice that this world is heading more towards hyper individualism and a sense of anti socialism. And given the current climate of the world where everybody is stressed and burned out and anxious and all these things, I completely understand it. I came across, in fact, not just came across like I just came across it, but I regularly come across people expressing the sentiment about not enjoying small talk. And small talk normally, I mean, I call it like coworker talk, where you talk to your coworker and specifically like a coworker that's not like your favorite coworker or like the coworker that you be a little bit more cordial with, but the ones that you just, hey, how's the weather? How you doing today? What'd you do over your weekend? Those type of things. And while I understand the sentiment and the mindset behind why people wouldn't enjoy them type of things, I just want to offer a different perspective on it. I want to offer my perspective on it because the truth is, I used to be one of them people, and I've grown to actually really enjoy small talk. Now, for me, and this might not apply to you. You might think differently. You might think I'm crazy for even saying that I like small talk, but it's not that I enjoy small talk all the time and not with everybody, because one thing that I notice is that people tend to kind of lump everybody together with everyone else. There's this thing called the main character syndrome going around where people feel a little too good to be in the process of anything. And small talk, much like everything else in the world, is a process. If you want any sort of success in the world, if you want to do anything, you're going to have to go through some sort of a process. And it's going to be grueling and it's going to be tedious and it's going to be just all these things that you don't want to do, but you got to do it because it strengthens your core. It strengthens excuse me. I'm not re-recording, but it strengthens your core essence. It strengthens your craft when you go through these small processes. A lot of people have horrible social lives, and I'm not throwing stones from a glass house. My social life could definitely stand to be better. The past, I want to say 5 years, had my social life has been completely dried up, and that's because, much like a lot of people, I had this mindset of not enjoying small talk, and it goes deeper than just small talk itself. It's about the process. So I look at small talk as kind of like a dialogue tree. Think of a decision based video game, right? I know it's crazy to equate something real life to video games, but I'm just trying to make it a little bit more relatable for you to be able to digest. But this is how I approach it, right? Think of a decision based video game where there's a dialogue tree, and that dialogue and those dialogues that you pick open up different pathways for different things. The thing about I'm just gonna use coworkers as an example, but you can apply this to really anything. You could apply it to your bartender. If you go to the bar a lot, you could apply it to even your own friends and your close loved ones. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'd be amazed what dialogues you can actually open up if you strengthen your craft. I heard somewhere that if you want better answers to things, then you need to ask better questions. So the point that I'm getting is that this dialogue tree, right? You pick an option and it can either open up another dialogue or it can lead to a dead end. Now, small talk, so to say, and I'm using air quotes even though I know you can't actually see me using air quotes, but small talk, when you have a situation where it's just a how you doing, I'm good, wonderful weather we're having, you're not really opening the door to a different kind of dialogue. And don't get me wrong, you don't have to want to interact on any sort of a deeper level or anything past a social level or a surface level with everybody. You can pick and choose who you choose to socialize with. I know that we end up in scenarios where we're forced to interact with certain people like coworkers, classmates, things of that nature. But you don't have to engage in any sort of in-depth dialogue with everybody. But it does benefit you to small talk. And the reason being is, like I said, you'd be amazed what you could find out. One of my coworkers, right? We work in the same place. He's older than me, by a good couple decades. He's 50 something, going into his 60, something like that. And on the surface, he came across, I ain't gonna lie, kind of like a goofy. You know what I'm saying? He just, I don't know how else to put it. I'm not insulting him. He's a good man and stuff like that. You feel me? And we interact on a daily basis now. But when based off my first impressions of him, I kind of wrote him off to the side, and I began to not engage with him in any sort of a dialogue. And when I did start to actually talk to him and actually, talk to him past the surface level of, how's your day doing, blah, 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 what time you get off work, or, how long you're here till, or whatever, I found out that he was a master chef. Back in his younger years, he was a master chef. He ran a business for a full decade. This man was like smart. He just presented himself in a pretty silly, goofy, quirky way. And had I not actually engaged in dialogue with this man, I would have never actually learned that. And I learned a lot about him, about running businesses, and he had traveled a lot and just did all these things that I would have never guessed just by looking at him and interacting with him on the surface level. And I've had this situation happen with a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? Now, there are people, of course, that you don't want to engage with. We all have predispositions towards people. It's just who we are as humans, as a species. But all I'm saying is that it wouldn't hurt you to engage in a little bit more small talk. If you feel like you're a little too good for small talk, but you don't have a good social life, then you should probably try and open up a little bit more dialogues and learn how to actually interact with people. The problem is that a lot of people, they kind of want to skip the early stages of things. I don't get how somebody could want a better social life, or at the very least, they might not even want a better social life. But I see a lot of people complaining about how they can't, interact with, say, someone of the opposite sex. Like, a lot of men can't really interact with women nowadays, and vice versa. Me personally, I've never really had that issue outside of what was inside of the confines of my own mind. But in reality, I've never had too much of an issue with talking to women. You know what I'm saying? And the reason being is because I wasn't afraid to engage in genuine platonic dialogue. And then that dialogue turned into something else down the line with some of them, and with some people it didn't. And whether that was because I didn't want it to turn into something different, or because, they didn't, it didn't hurt me in the long run to engage with that type of thing. I know someone personally that has this mentality. In fact, I'm sure we all know a bunch of people like this, or at least a person like this, where they get to a certain point in their life and they're just like, yeah, I don't really interact with no new people. I don't make no new friends. I don't really yada, 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 or whatever. And once again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But what I am saying is that those same type of people are the ones that feel the most alone because they feel like they can't really talk to anybody. And when you only have one other person to talk to, one or two other people, which you should only have 1 to 2 close friends, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you need a bunch of friends or that you need a super, super wide network of associates and situations and all these things. But what I'm saying is that when you close off the potential for varied outputs or inputs, I guess, it closes off your mind and it closes off your perspective. And because of that, you don't grow. And the whole point of this experience is to grow and to do new things. So, if you're one of those people, I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of like pausing in weird places, but you got to work with me. If you're one of those people who is struggling with their social life, then maybe you should engage in a little bit more small talk and stop looking at it as this burdensome thing. I mean, it can be, don't get me wrong, but they said it in I think it was BoJack Horseman, where he said it gets easier every day, but you have to do it every day, and that's the hard part. And this is just one of them things. If you really do want to have a better, more fulfilling social life and have better interactions with people overall. Well, and like I said, you don't have to interact with everybody. You don't have to open up the dialogue tree with everybody. But, I know that a lot of people don't seem to understand why their social lives tank so bad, or why they're so awkward or socially awkward or anything like that. And the reason being is because you don't know how to take baby steps. You gotta crawl before you can walk. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's the truth. So that's all I really had to say on it. Like I said, it was just a different perspective. And if you made it this far, I appreciate you. But until I see you in the next one, I'm gonna be up out of here. All right, peace.